right, welcome back to another edition of Bring Me the Sports on the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. And we are talking Minnesota Gophers football and the transfer portal. So, the Gophers have already gotten their first and second commitment of this cycle. The first guy was a big one. Much like last offseason, the first domino to fall was at the quarterback position. The Gophers got a commitment from Georgia Tech transfer Zach Pyron, and on Thursday they got a commitment from Purdue transfer tight end Drew Biber. So, where do those guys fit in? And that's what we're going to break down. If you go to the Gophers on SI website, we have just posted a article talking about Zach Pyron versus Drake Lindsey. Who's going to start week one for the Gophers? Um, that's a really interesting debate, and that's kind of where I want to start here. Um, the quarterback was the biggest question, I think, of the offseason, and it's going to continue to be until the Gophers play Buffalo week one in 2025. And I think it's going to dominate even the conversation during the season. But right off the bat, I think that Zach Pyron has the ability to start, and I think it's going to be a true competition, him versus Drake Lindsey. I think I would compare it to a little cross sport reference here. Um, in boxing or in the UFC, in the fight game, a promoter typically has a star that's homegrown that they want to build up, but you're going to match them up with someone that's not the end of the world if they lose. The UFC specifically, I don't know how many of the people watching this are UFC fans, so this is probably a stupid argument, but um Sean O'Malley, for example, really big star in the UFC. They were building him up, and then they matched him up with number one contender. And if he won that, it made him a star. But if he lost, it wasn't the end of the world because the number one contender was good. This is kind of like that for the Gophers. This is Drake Lindsey's number one contender opportunity. If he wins this opportunity, then he's the starting quarterback. If he doesn't, then he just wasn't ready. If a fighter loses the fight against the number one contender, they're just not ready. So, uh, this is his title eliminate title eliminator fight, for lack of a better term. I don't know how many people are going to get that reference. It was kind of pointless, but um, I think Zach Pyron's a really talented guy. He was a former four-star recruit, won 2 state titles in Alabama, another state championship appearance. He was originally committed to Baylor, then flipped to Georgia Tech, and then he started as a true freshman at Georgia Tech. Started 3 games at the end of the year. They had Jeff Sims go down with a couple injuries, head coaching change. He started, could have been the last 3 games, but he did start, or started 2, played in 3. And he did well in those games for a true freshman. I mean, they were ACC games in October and November. 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, around 600 passing yards. And as a teenager playing in the ACC, those are good numbers. As we've seen in the past, what I'll get into when Ethan Kaliakmanis started in 2023, I think the Gophers learned a lot from that whole situation. There was not much depth behind him. You had Cole Kramer, who we saw playing the bowl game that season, and you had some young guys. You had Jacob Knuth and Drew Vioto, who are no longer on the team, but you didn't have much depth. And this situation, the Gophers have depth. And basically, what I'm saying is, I still think if everything goes to plan, Drake Lindsey is their starter. I think the team wants him to be their starter. But adding Pyron now gives them the opportunity to not put all of their eggs into the Lindsey basket. If Lindsey's not ready, they can just start Pyron week one. And I think the way the schedule lays out, it's way too early to talk about it in December, but we're going to do it. The schedule with Buffalo week one, Northwestern State week two, they're going to be heavily favored in those games at home. And I think they'll have the opportunity to Play both guys. If I had to guess, I think that's what's gonna happen. I think both guys I don't know who's gonna start, but I think both guys will get a chance early in the year. I think it's a true competition. Um, I think Gophers fans are gonna be wanting Lindsey because he's the homegrown guy that has been in the program. But I wouldn't give up on Pyron just because he got beat out at Georgia Tech. Because I mentioned that he started a few games as a true freshman. Then they brought in Haynes King as a transfer from Texas A&M, who's a really good college quarterback. Had more experience. He was their starter the last 2 years, and then he got injured. So Pyron didn't play in 2023. He redshirted that year. He appeared in a couple games, but counted as a redshirt. And then in 2024, Haynes King goes down. Pyron starts against Notre Dame, up and down game, but he looked competent. And then next week starts against Virginia Tech, really struggles, and then they bench him in favor of true freshman Aaron Philo, who oddly enough was a commitment was committed to the Gophers verbally as a high school recruit and flipped to Georgia Tech. So a lot of connections there at the quarterback room, but he didn't get beat out by scrubs by any means. These are two really talented um, college quarterbacks that beat him out. So I would not give up on him and say, oh, he couldn't even be the backup at an ACC school. He's a really talented quarterback. And another aspect to this is he's a really good running quarterback. And we've seen in the past with Cole Kramer, with Seth Green, that PJ Fleck likes to bring in quarterbacks for special packages. Drake Lindsey's not a running quarterback. He's a pocket guy. He's going to sit back there and sling it. So I just think there's a lot of opportunities for the Gophers to use both guys, and I kind of think they will. There's a lot to shake out. The filling out the rest of the transfer portal, who else they're going to get, but as of right now in December, that's what I could kind of foresee taking place. And I could see both guys, either guy starting week one. I mean, Pyron's made 5 starts against power conference opponents. Uh, I think Lindsey's attempted 4 passes. So I think this is a move that the Gophers, um, it gives them a lot of different angles they can take. They have a really talented quarterback room now with Dylan Whitkey behind them. Jackson Kolick as 4-star true freshman, Max Shikanjansky. That's a good group of 5 quarterbacks. And I think it gives them depth. It gives them opportunities. It gives them a veteran leader in that room, a guy that all 4 of the other guys have not made a start at the college level. And having a room that green, I think would have been really risky going into the year. But now they can be like, hey, Zach, what happened when you started in this situation, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's just an overall really safe move, gives them a lot of opportunities, a lot of options. It's so much different than the Max Brosmer move last offseason because it was Brosmer's team. I don't think this is necessarily Pyron's team, um, but it gives them a lot of talent at the position. So I like the move, and I think it will give them options heading into 2025. So quarterback isn't the only position on the team, and they got a lot of other positions to attack. They also got a commitment from Purdue transfer tight end Drew Biber, um, and he will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. So we're going to look at the roster, see where these guys fit in from a more depth chart perspective. So as it stands today, there's been 9 Gophers players that have entered the transfer portal, um, 4 of which are scholarship players, but now they have 2 scholarship players coming in, Pyron and Drew Biber. So where do those guys fit in? If you watched the last video, we talked about the scholarship and the roster outlook for 2025 and how it's dropping to 105 players. Right now, the Gophers have 104 players, I think, that could be returning. Um, these are guys that have either said they're returning, like Anthony Smith, Devin Eastern, Coy Parrish, Darius Taylor, or guys that have the option to return, like a Derek LeCaptain, Martez Lewis, that have not said they're going to enter the transfer portal. This could change. There could be guys on this list that already think they're leaving, but they just haven't said it yet. But the Gophers are still going to be very active, and this one open spot I think is going to grow, but that'll be something definitely worth monitoring as the offseason progresses. And they have a lot of options on campus this weekend. So we'll talk about where Pyron and Biber fit on the depth chart, but there are as many as 9, could be more, at least 9 players that are having confirmed visits either today, this week, or this weekend. And it's a lot of weapons. We're right off the bat. Cole Cabana from Michigan, a running back, 3 years of eligibility left. Reportedly good friends with Darius Taylor, would be a great number 2 option. And also AJ Turner from Marshall, 2 years of eligibility left, led the country in rushing yards per game. Great. The Gophers are competing with North Carolina and Bill Belichick for him, so that'll be an interesting one worth monitoring. I think they have a chance of landing a commitment, but a talent player nonetheless. And then at the wide receiver position, you have Malachi Coleman, who's reportedly visiting today, and it's his first visit, a former 4-star prospect, top 75 guy, really comparable to Dalen Green, former Gophers wide receiver. Very similar skill set, very similar talent, and he could fill in a similar role with the Gophers, but really highly touted guy. Minnesota will have to compete with a lot of people there. And then Javon Tracy, Miami of Ohio transfer wide receiver, first team All MAC guy last season. Really talented receiver. Going to have a lot of options, but the Gophers are among the teams that are in the mix. So that's one worth monitoring. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you got Rushawn Lawrence from Stony Brook, a guy I could see them adding, and Jaden Williams from Wyoming. Those 2 guys are, I think, firmly in the mix that I would really keep an eye on there. And then you add Stephen Curtis from Illinois State, who has a couple visits to Boston College and Cincinnati, I believe. Gophers are in the mix there. And then lastly, you got Alvin Ebosele, a left tackle from Baylor that could be the Ariante Ursary replacement, and Gabe Powers, a linebacker from Ohio State. So there's going to be plenty of talent there. We can break that down if they commit, but those are just some names to keep an eye out on this weekend. I expect at least a couple to commit to the Gophers. So before we go here, let's look at where Pyron and Biber, 2 guys who are officially committed to the school, where they fit into the depth chart. So I still put Drake Lindsey 1. If I had to guess who starts week 1, I'm saying Drake Lindsey, but Pyron, I could be swayed either way. I think it's really a coin flip. And so that gives them some real depth in the quarterback room with Whitkey as a formidable third option. I think he's a really good QB3, and then Jackson Cole, 4-star true freshman. No pressure on him to develop this year. If he does, then you hit a home run. If he doesn't, then you just wait until next year. And then as for the tight end position, we haven't talked much about Biber. The Gophers are losing Nick Callerup to graduation this year. So they're looking for a tight end too. They kind of the recent years they've had the one pass catcher and then a blocking guy. Biber's more of a pass catcher. He was a good basketball player, but he has a very similar physical profile to Callerup, so they can develop him into a run blocker. That's for sure. But Frank Bierman, Nathan Jones, 2 guys that'll be in the mix there. That's kind of be the top 4 at the position, I think, in 2025. But Gears will be the clear number 1, and then it's Biber, Bierman, and Jones competing for that number 2 spot. But gives the Gophers a veteran and some depth at that position. Far from a game changing move like Pyron or maybe some of these playmakers are, but a needed move because it gives them depth at a position that needed it and experience. So, yeah, this will be a big weekend for the Gophers. The transfer portal news is always crazy. It can always change right on an instance. Even last year, we saw that sometimes verbal commitment doesn't mean that a guy is coming here. I think the Gophers had 3 or 4 of those last year that flipped. Sounds like Pyron is almost a done deal. I've seen his father say that he's excited for his son to play at Minnesota. So that one, I would be pretty shocked if that flips, but um, it's just getting started. The transfer portal all December and maybe even a little bit into January is going to be crazy. And make sure to stay here on Gophers on SI and the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel for all updates. It is the portal offseason and it is crazy. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you like the video, it helps us get found, and subscribe to the Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel. And we'll see you next